Good morning to everyone who's joined so far. Welcome to the 21A Cloud Financials webinar. We're due to be starting in 3 minutes, and we're just waiting for some of the other attendees to join. So hello everyone, and a warm welcome to our first advisory session webinar of 2021. These sessions focus on delivering and updating you on the new features and functionalities that are made available as part of Oracle's quarterly release cycle. My name is Chris Gomez, and I'm an account director here at Evosys. And today I'm your host for this session, where I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Sukhjit Singh, who works in our ERP Centre of Excellence team, and will be taking us through the finance updates in 21A. Sukhjit has been with Evosys for over 6 years now, and he's led many finance implementations, mainly in the UK. Supporting us today will also be Ankit Verma, who is on hand to answer questions throughout the webinar. And Ankit has been with Evosys for 9.5 years now, again working in the Centre of Excellence team, carrying out various roles in that time. Sukhjit will be taking us through the hot topics and everything you need to know about the main features of this release today. We've got an extended advisory session today, giving us about 90 minutes to allow greater time to cover some more of the features, as well as to allow more time at the end for questions. So it's a slightly longer session than we've done in previous calls. However, as always, we will make an extended PowerPoint available to you for any of the features that we don't cover in the session, and obviously for you to then digest at your own leisure. So by means of an agenda, we'd like to cover 5 main areas today. So firstly, I will talk a bit about our approach to the Oracle updates before handing over to Sukhjit, who will give us a quick summary on the most popular 20D features that we helped our customers deploy. And then we'll move on to the analysis of this latest release, providing an insight into the new available features, as well as highlighting things to consider when deploying them. This will also cover some of the known issues that need to be considered, and Sukhjit will talk through this in around 40 to 50 minutes. And then after this session, I want to spend a bit of time talking to you about the role innovative technologies plays in supporting Oracle investments. And today's focus will be on robotic process automation and how it can support regression testing, as well as automating some of the other business processes. Then we'll leave some time at the end to close and cover off any questions. But please do ask questions throughout the webinar in the chat option, as Ankit will be managing the answering of those questions. But we will say that some questions may be left until the end, so please don't worry if your question isn't answered straight away. Okay, so let's delve into the approach of how we look at the Oracle. So this slide, for many of you that we're welcoming back, will be familiar. It's very similar to the previous sessions, but I wanted to run through it to serve you as a reminder, as well as that there are many new attendees joining this session today. So we just want to take them through it as well and serve it as a reminder for those who have joined. So when we talk about an update, there are generally 4 categories of events that we must consider prior to deployment. First, we need to analyze and consider each of the options that are available to be rolled out, and then look at the impact they have on user experience and productivity, answering the question of do we need it. Secondly, we have to plan how we deploy the updates by carrying out some sort of impact. We then test to ensure that there are no issues as part of rolling these out. And during my session later, I hope to provide you with some insight in how we can potentially help in this phase. And I'm sure you'll all agree it's probably the most intensive and time-consuming stage. And then the 3 stages I've covered so far then put us in a position to launch the new version and the new features. And our session today looks at supporting phase 1 of this 4-step process, as well as looking at how we can help in step 3. The way we present the information regarding each feature is summarized in this slide. And again, as with the previous slide, this may be familiar to some of you who've joined the previous sessions, but as a reminder, each slide that Sukhjit is going to take us through includes the name of the feature with a short description of the release, To better inform you and give you a brief on what the feature is for, we include a business benefit section to help you understand how advantageous it may be to your organisation with the outcomes it could give you. We then include a high-level impact analysis on the right here with 4 main areas. You've got the impact level. Obviously, a low would mean no large-scale impact, so regression testing may not really be required or can be ignored. And obviously, a high impact level would be the complete opposite. Does the feature need to be enabled, or will it just appear post-upgrade? How about configuration? Well, we highlight this too as part of the feature summary. And clearly, an update that needs configuration needs more planning time. We also include a quick win gauge, which takes into account the level of effort and time required to get this feature set up. So, Sukeep, before we jump into going through the 21A features, could we review the 5 most popular 20D features that we supported our customers with deploying last quarter?
Sure, Chris. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. As Chris mentioned, before jumping into the 21A features for the new upgrade provided by Oracle, let's just take a quick look at the 20D blockbusters, which we think were most helpful to the organizations across the world. So jumping to that, these are the 5 most blockbuster features which we think were very helpful to the organizations. This is as per our experience with the different organizations. As you can see on the screen, the 2 features are related to the journal ledger. The first one being related to the period closure, where the system now prevents us to close the journal ledger period unless and until all the sub-ledger periods are being closed. So in the last release, Oracle provided us with sub-ledgers that were included were payables, receivables, and revenue management. With this release, Oracle again has updated this one. We'll cover in detail when we go to the 21A features. The next one was a big game changer of how the solution was designed for the chart of accounts for the various organizations. This feature provided us, the organizations, with an opportunity to relate the chart of account. That is, there were options now available to relate one chart of account to another chart of account. So, for example, my legal entity value set can now be related with an intercompany value set. So that was a good game changer available, provided by Oracle at the solutioning level for the chart of account. The next feature provided by Oracle was with respect to the payables variant. Again, a good feature with respect to the period closure controls. As you all know, that Oracle now provides us the period closure reconciliation report between the payables and the journal ledger to make sure that my balances are tallied out between the subledger and the GL. This now provided us a more detailed down version of how the variance between the two is coming up. A drill down feature was provided by Oracle on this one. The next feature was related to the fixed assets, which was very specific to the UK sector, because UK government requires all the entities reporting under them to bifurcate the historical amounts and the revalued amounts in all the fixed asset reporting. Unfortunately, prior to 20D, this was not available as part of standard Oracle reporting. But with 20D, Oracle introduced this and helped a lot to all the organizations who were using the fixed assets, and now they could rely directly on the Oracle standard reports. The last feature, which we thought was a blockbuster, was with respect to the logbox. Now, logbox is a feature which allows us to automate the process of creating the receipts in the accounts receivables. And now with this particular feature, we could also capture some specific information from the receipt management system, and then the same, if available in the bank statement, could be used by the cash manager again for the reconciliation and the automating the process of reconciliation. So these were the top 5 features which we thought were a game changer from the 20D upgrade. There are some of the game changers again in 21 upgrade, which we'll just take a look after this.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sugeet. What I'd like to do now, if possible, is I'd like to actually put a poll out to our attendees just to see which of these blockbuster features they felt was the most important one to them and their organization. So let me just launch a quick poll, if I may. And the idea is, if you could just give us one one answer as to which you felt was the most beneficial to your organization. Thank you everyone for who's voted so far. It seems to be clearly popular one. I won't reveal the results just yet, but if for any of those that are on the call today that haven't voted yet and would like to, please feel free to vote, and I'll share the results shortly. Okay, so the results are in. You should see the results on your screen now, and you can see that the clear winner was prevent general ledger period closure when open subledger period exists. So thank you very much for everyone who's voted. And Sukit, can I now hand back over to you to take us through what to expect in 21A?
Sure, Chris. Thank you. Okay, and let's move to the 21A features. Yeah. Now with 21A, Oracle has introduced 26 new features in the cloud financials, which we have bifurcated into 4 different categories. As Chris explained earlier how to read the feature summary, we have bifurcated it into 4 categories, whether it's a quick win or not, and whether it requires configuration or not. So that are the 2 initial categories: quick win with no configuration and quick win with a configuration. And the next one is quick win, but there is some the organizations need to enable that feature to start using that feature. And the last category is, though there are important features in that category also, which is not so much of a quick win, just because it requires some configuration from the organization point of view or from the partner point of view. So though it's an important feature, but it requires some effort. So those are the features which require some more planning, that how we are going to implement those features if we want to start using them. I'll straight away jump into the features, starting with the first feature, quick wins default. There is no enabling required for all these features that we'll cover in this section, and there is no configuration also required on this section. So the first one is supplier invoice import with remittance bank account details. As you would all know that Oracle maintains a supplier master wherein all my banking details of that particular supplier are being captured, and from that banking supplier master, the details are being defaulted on the invoices, the payables invoices. There was no such option available earlier wherein I could just select any random in banking details from at the invoice level. Now with this particular feature, what Oracle has introduced is that while importing the invoices from by either using the web services or whether using the ADFBA spreadsheet or the FBL spreadsheet, Oracle has now provided us a specific field wherein we can capture a specific bank account number for that particular supplier. So it means that whatever is available at the supplier master, we can override that while using the particular importing the sub invoices from the third-party systems. So this means that even though while creating an invoice from the manual, I do not have that option, but while importing it from the third party, I do get an option. Now, when we can make use of this particular feature or introduced by Oracle, this feature can now be used by both kind of organizations who are already using Oracle or who are just about to go live. First, I'll cover the who are already using the Oracle. For example, if they are also using the supplier portal. So supplier portal allows the suppliers only to update the bank details at the supplier header level and not at the site level. So if I want to default the what Oracle supplier is heading from the supplier header level, then I can use the FBL or a custom repo, custom integration, just to make sure that whatever Oracle supplier has added at the supplier header from the supplier portal can now be defaulted on the supplier invoices, whichever are being created from the third-party system. So just with the additional integration, there is more flexibility available around the supplier portal. Another way for those organizations which are going live with this with new features, these can be for the data migration. So it might happen that organizations, the suppliers are what we have at the supplier master, but there are some of the invoices in the legacy system which relate to some other banking details which need to be paid into some other bank account of that particular supplier. So using this feature, that can now be used and that can now be migrated easily. I have just added a screenshot over here which tells you which field can be used from the FBL to capture the such details. Now I'll move to the next feature. The next feature is quite a game changer or introduced by Oracle, which has helped the organization, which was earlier dealt with one or the other workaround provided by provided by the partner. What this feature introduced, what does this feature do is that Oracle, earlier there was a requirement in the construction industry specifically, which was there was some agreement with the suppliers, which required that we cannot pay to the suppliers 100% of the original invoice amount. We had to retain the some amount of the invoice unless and until some of the agreements with the conditions of the agreement with the supplier have been met or not. We used to use one or the other workaround to meet this requirement across the organization. But with this feature, what Oracle has done is introduce the standard functionality, which is known as the retainage. What it does is at the time of the invoice creation itself, we can provide that, okay, whenever an invoice against this particular supplier is created, retain 10% of the whole amount. So even if the invoice is of, let's say, $1,000, I can just tell the Oracle, just retain 10% of it, 10% of the whole invoice amount. So when the invoice payment is done, only $900 are paid out of the system. 100 is being kept as pending as a retained amount, and a separate invoice altogether is created with the payment terms defaulted again from the supplier. Therefore, using the standard functionality now, Oracle has gone away from the workarounds, and this now can be used across different organizations which have such requirements with the suppliers, wherein we need to retain some amount from the supplier invoices. You can see on the screen the retainage percentage and the retainage amount are available on the particular supplier invoices. The next feature available is from the receivables perspective. Again, this feature is used for those organizations who are more into the manual application of the receipts to the invoices. This feature now provides us additional attributes available at the application screen for the receivable receipts. So whenever a receipt is being created, even if it's created from the logbox that is through the automated process, or even if it's created manually from by the user, then now Oracle provides us some additional attributes to search the invoices against which the receipts could be applied. The additional attributes that are available are the site details, the customer bill to site, the receipt method on a particular invoice. So I just want to search only those invoices which have a receipt method of electronic or any such method. So I can search by that, or I can now search by the transaction date, which were earlier not available on the search screen for the receivable invoices. With this feature now, Oracle has just helped the users to improve the efficiency of the users who are currently dealing with this manual process. It's a quick win. There is no configuration of it required on this particular start using this particular feature. The screen gets automatically updated as soon as your systems are upgraded to 21A. Okay. Now this feature is now very specific. It's from the fixed assets module, and I'll say this is very specific to the US organizations who are part of the government structure. So these, as per GASB, which is Government Accounting Standard principles provided by the US government, this GASB 34 required the organizations to make their financial statements user friendly, and therefore ask the organizations to identify their fixed asset categories directly from the subjectives. Now, Oracle had introduced this particular feature to legally comply with that particular requirement of the US government. Now, this feature, what will it do is that directly from the subjective, system will automatically identify whether to which expense job category the particular invoice needs to be booked as classified as an asset. So user needs not carry out any additional activity while transferring the invoices from the accounts payables module to the fixed assets module. Thus, by system will automatically identify that if this particular subjective or natural account is selected at the invoice level, system will automatically classify that this belongs to this particular category of the fixed assets. Now, as I mentioned, this is very specific to US And again, in US, it is very again specific to the government sector organization. Cash management, reconciliation of the third-party roll-up payments. Now, this one is specific from the in payments that are being done from the payroll. And again, this really makes the life easy for the cash managers who are dealing with the manual reconciliation for the payroll payments. So, what does this particular this feature will do is now in the payroll payments, any of the payments which are made to the third parties, for example, HMRC, for example, the pension payments, anything that are being paid to third party organizations on behalf of the employees, till now, before 21A, Oracle does not roll up all these payments and the cash manager had to manually reconcile them. If the bank statement contains only a single line for all these payments, then it becomes a little bit difficult, or users normally have to rely on complex automatic matching rules to attain this particular functionality to match the system transactions with the bank statement transactions. But this feature coming up, Oracle now provides us the opportunity that any payments made to the third-party systems from the payroll can now be rolled up into a single line on the system transactions, and thus automatic reconciliation can be achieved with easy rules, not so complex rules. And again, if by any chance automatic cannot be achieved due to any of the reason, then it also becomes care for the cash manager to manually reconcile this. The only additional task on the user end from the payroll side is to run a particular process by the name of run third party payment roll-up process. This particular process will automatically roll up, accumulate all the payments done to the third parties for that particular period, and after that it will be transferred to the cash manager. So this one feature again requires no configuration and does not require any enabling, just an additional one single process is required to be run by the payroll team. After that, it makes the life easy for the cash manager. Next feature is from the payables side, I'll say from the payables and the supplier master side, wherein now the tax registration feature is available for the invoice supplier search. So whenever I'm trying to create an invoice and want to search the particular supplier, I can now search on the basis of the tax registration number. Now, we know in UK, tax registration number is one of the unique fields from which we identify whether the supplier exists in our system or not. And this is again helpful in identifying the unique suppliers. So by providing this particular feature, we can identify just by looking at the supplier name and the tax registration number whether the invoice belongs to that particular supplier or not, in case there are multiple suppliers created by the same name in the system. It improves the efficiency of the user who is now manually creating all the invoices. It helps him quickly search to which supplier the invoices belong to. A small feature, I'll say, but again, an impactful feature just from the point of view of the end user who spends most of their time entering the invoices manually. In this particular release 21A, Oracle has introduced some of the features in the mobile application for the expenses module. This is one of the good features introduced by Oracle, which is kind of what was available earlier, but they had now improved how the users can use the application. So whosoever has used the application would know that currently whenever the location field is available at the mobile application, it's just a free text available. So users can enter anything. It's not available as a list of values from the system. So up till now, what happened was user could enter anything. If that particular location did not match with the location available in the system as a list of value, then there would be a mismatch and the expense reports would result into error. But this feature now Oracle has synced up my mobile application with the system, and now the list of values are available in the mobile application directly. So users can now just select from the list of values that at which location the expense was incurred. We had to go by one or the other workaround in one of our projects just to overcome this feature, just to overcome this lack of feature till 21A. But this feature we can now go back to the standard functionality and rely on the standard application which Oracle provides for the expense claiming. Next one, again, with respect to the expenses module, Oracle Digital Assistant. Now, just to give you a brief idea, Oracle Digital Assistant is a conversational tool provided by Oracle, wherein you could just send a message to this Oracle Digital Assistant with list of your expenses, and Oracle Digital Expense Assistant will create your expense reports automatically for you. So user need not go into the mobile application also, not even to the system. They can just send a text message to the specific Oracle Digital Assistant, and system will automatically create the expense report for it. This feature was Oracle Digital Assistant has been available for quite some time now with Oracle, but with this feature, now it just provides additional efficiency to the users, additional conversational tool to the user, wherein the user, let's say I as a user had created some I have manually created some expense report directly into the system. But now with this feature, I can just send a text message to the Oracle Digital Assistant that combine all my individual expense items or individual expense reports, which are created manually by me in the system, and automatically submit that. So even those which have been manually created into the system, I can now automatically submit from the Oracle Digital Assistant. Just by sending a text message saying or submit my expense report, system will ask me whether I need to provide a name to the expense report or not, and system will submit the same for me. So that's another feature, good feature provided by Oracle Digital Assistant. Another application, mobile application related feature introduced by Oracle, which says that flight class policy enforcement. Now, there are some of the policies which we have seen across organizations wherein users from specific grade or specific role can use the business economy, can use the business class of the flight, or can use the economy class of the flight. This policy could be enforced when user was claiming the expenses through the system, but unfortunately till now it was not available in the mobile application. So even if I was not allowed to claim business class of the airfare, I could still claim it from the mobile application. Then it was dependent upon my manager to make sure that what I was claiming was correct. But with this feature now, Oracle has provided major controls saying that, okay, what is being enforced from the system will now be enforced from the mobile application also with respect to this policy based upon the airfare. Okay, just to provide additional controls on the mobile application and increase the usability of the mobile application. This one is a small feature again introduced by Oracle on the manage invoices screen. Now, whenever we land on the invoice landing page wherein we have different infolets available to the users, the first infolet, if we are using the idea tool or the imaging tool of the Oracle, then the first infolet is for the scanned invoices, but the second one is for the recent invoices. So the recent invoices, we have the option wherein we can toggle between the number of days for which I want to see the invoices. So I can see in the recent invoices only my invoices which I have created or updated, but I can see from whether I want to see for last 3 days, for last 7 days, for 14 days, and for last 30 days. But now the same kind of feature Oracle has introduced on the my manage invoices, wherein Oracle has provided me for which period I want to see the last invoices. So system will check on the creation or the last updation date for the invoices, any invoices which have been updated in last 3 days, which have been updated in last 7 days, and it will not restrict to those invoices which have been updated or created by me. So if I just want to make a quick search of all the invoices which have been updated in the system in last 3 days, Oracle has now introduced just a drop down. I can just select the 3 days and click on go. System will bring out all the list of invoices which have been updated in last 3 days, not specific to any user. So again, a small feature, but improves the efficiency and productivity of the user if the users are effectively using the manage invoices screen for searching the invoice. So these were the features which were of quick wins for the organizations, which did not require any opt-ins or did not require any configuration from the organization point of view. Now we'll jump on to those features which are quick wins but require enabling. So you will have to go into the offerings to enable this feature so that you can start using these features from 21A as and when your system gets upgraded. So the first one is the from the cash management point of view, wherein automatic reconciliation of bank accounts for a bank, branch, or the legal entity. Now, this is mainly from the maintenance point of view, wherein the organization, wherein when we are scheduling the processes or running the processes of automatic reconciliation, there was a mandatory parameter of bank account. So if I had, let's say, 30 to 40 bank accounts in my organization, I had to schedule that particular process separately for, I have to run or schedule that particular process separately for each of the bank accounts. I could not combine them. For example, if I just want to combine for a legal entity, there was no such option available. But this now, the Oracle has interchanged the parameters for that particular process, that is submit the automatic reconciliation. Now you'll find 3 additional parameters, whether you want to run it for a specific bank. So if there are 5 banks but 40 bank accounts, now I can run that particular process 5 times, and system will incorporate all the bank accounts. If I want to run for a particular branch, I can do that. Or if I want to run for a legal entity, I can run for a single legal entity. I just need to enable this feature, but it's available as a quick win. Now, the screenshot that you see on your system is still an old screenshot. We did not get a chance to because there is no upgraded system available, but Oracle has told us that there will be parameters available on this screen where I'm running the automatic reconciliation process. So I can now use this particular feature to improve how I run the processes. So Cash Manager Lite gets more easy whenever I'm running the automatic reconciliation, and also from the admin team point of view, whenever we are scheduling the processes. Now, as in the poll we conducted earlier, you all majority 51% of the attendees recognized that this feature, which was introduced in 20D, was a much of a game changer and was effectively used by our organizations. In 20D, Oracle introduced this feature which said that journal ledger you cannot close the journal ledger period unless and until the subledgers are closed. But Oracle had introduced only a limited number of subledgers in that. So in 20D, we had cost management, we had payables, receivables, and revenue management. But now with 21A, Oracle has introduced assets. So until and unless now or fixed assets period is closed, we cannot close the GL period. Now what it will require from the UK perspective. For the UK, what we have seen in the UK organizations, UK-based organizations, that we keep our fixed asset period open till later period time of the year, just to make sure the revaluation figures are carried out and all those processes are being carried out in the system, and they could close the GL period. But with this feature now, the standard functionality and the standard processes, they will have to start thinking about the feature that the fixed asset period also needs to be closed before they could close the GL period, just to make sure that the financial statements always tally with the fixed assets balances, and there is no mismatch between what we are reporting out to the third parties and what's available in our system. So Oracle has now try to ensure tighter controls over the period closure with the introduction of the fixed assets as one of the subledgers, wherein we need to make sure that the subledger period is closed before we close the journal ledger period. So a tighter control again into the period closure process. This one is from the payment side, inclusion of transaction tax amount in the payment file extract. Now, in some of the, we have seen in some of our legal requirements of the organization, wherein they need to include the tax amount in the payment file which they send out to the bank. We have not seen it across many organizations, but some of the organization and industry do have such legal requirements, wherein they need to inform the bank about the tax amount included in the whole payment to the supplier. Earlier, this tag was not available in the payment file as a standard functionality, but now Oracle has introduced that particular tag, thus complying with the legal requirements of the organization. So if you have any such legal requirement, and then you might have customized your payment file, or you might not have been able to automate the process of sending the banking payment file to the banking system. Now with this feature, that particular process will now, you can start using the standard functionality of automating the whole process of generating the payment from the Oracle and sending it to the bank. But it's again very limited to those organizations who have any such legal requirement. This is again a good, it has a high impact feature, a good feature introduced by Oracle, wherein Oracle has tried to make sure that the tax calculation can be driven directly from the source. So what it has done is, whenever the invoice is being created from the supplier portal, Oracle has now provided additional attributes or additional tax drivers in the supplier portal, wherein the suppliers can provide the tax control amount, they can provide the classification of the product, they can provide the assessable value of the product, and all these attributes are now available in the supplier portal. So because supplier portal is being used by limited suppliers, we introduce the supplier portal to a limited set of suppliers itself. If the suppliers are trained properly, then we can make sure that the tax calculation of the system of the invoices is being right at the source itself. Till now, what if the tax calculation is not right at the supplier portal level, at the source level, then the AP team had always need to go into the manually change the tax details at the invoice whenever it comes to the AP module, and they have to override what was being provided by the supplier. So just to make sure that the tax calculations are correct. But this led to a major onus on the AP team to make sure the tax calculation was right. But these now additional tax drivers available at the supplier portal level, we can make sure that if the suppliers are trained properly and they are also aware about the tax laws of the organization and the country itself, then the tax calculation can be right at the very initial level. We need to enable this feature, and we need to also do some configuration just to make sure the tax drivers are available at the supplier portal. Cash pooling for the receivables multifund accounting. Now, this feature, what does it do? Receivables multifund accounting is a feature. I'll just give you a brief idea about the receivables multifund accounting. So whenever an organization has multiple BSVs, multiple legal entities or multiple BSVs, then what it would do is multifund accounting, it would make sure that my receivables account that is being generated is in line with the revenue account. For example, if I'm creating an AR invoice which has multiple lines and all the lines belong to different BSVs. So my line 1 revenue account was generated for BSV 1, line 2 had BSV 2, and line 3 had BSV 3 for their revenue accounts. Then using the multi-fund accounting system provided a flexibility, the receivables account is also getting generated at each BSV level. So there will be 3 lines of receivable account and 3 lines of revenue account, all bifurcated on the basis of the BSV. But whenever the receipt was created against that particular invoice, so because the cash account, the bank account was one, because it was received only in one particular bank account, the whole of the invoice, the intercompany accounting was getting generated at the time of receipt, which you could see from my next slide. As you can see, if this is before the cash pooling is available, you could see my intercompany accounting being generated at the receipt level. But with this feature, the cash pooling feature, now if cash pooling earlier was available only for the payable side, but with cash pooling now available for the receivable side, what it does is it makes sure that the cash account is also getting hit as per the receivables or the revenue account. So if I take up the example again, if I had 3 lines for revenue account, then system using the multi-fund accounting will generate 3 lines of receivable account. And then with the cash pooling feature, system will generate 3 lines of my cash. So system will make sure that my cash is also getting generated as per the different BSVs, as you can see over here. So system will make sure that there is no intercompany which is required to be generated. If the organization have any such requirement wherein we do not want to generate any intercompany between the BSVs, then cash pooling with the multi-fund accounting can be used effectively. Notional and physical cash pools. Now this is a small feature introduced by Oracle in the cash management, wherein if we want to, if there is any such requirement that let's say there are multiple bank accounts of an organization, out of which one is a concentrated bank account and the other one are subsidiary bank accounts. So, and every day at the end of the day, all amounts need to be transferred from the subsidiary bank accounts to the cash to the concentrated bank account. Then this feature can be used. The only thing is that we need this feature can be used if we are starting the process from the Oracle. So by that I mean that if the starting point of the process that I initiate the bank transfer from Oracle and then it goes to the banking portal, then we can use this feature of cash pooling, notional and physical cash pools. But if our starting point is banking portal and then we just record the bank transfers between different bank accounts in Oracle after we have actually made the transfer on the banking portal, then this feature does not come in use. It will only come in use when we initiate the process from the Oracle. It was earlier available in EBS, and now Oracle has introduced this in the cloud also. Retrieval of funds capture acknowledgement files using a wildcard. Now, this feature is quite handy for those organizations wherein the bank provides them the file of all those rejected payments. So we have in UK we have a BACS process. In the US we have an ACH process wherein we generate the payment files from Oracle and send it to the banking systems wherein they'll process those payments. But there could be some cases where there are some rejected payments out of it. If the bank is able to provide the files in a Oracle readable format, then this feature now provides a better integration facility with the banking. So if the bank is able to provide us those files, the rejected payment file in a specific format, then earlier the integration was available only with the SFTP servers, but now with this feature, Oracle has introduced S2 UCM, which is an inbuilt server for Oracle. So that feature is now available and can be used if the process is automated for capturing the BACS rejection or the ACH rejections for all the payments. So a niche, and we have not normally seen all the banks providing such rejected payment files, but if the bank is able to provide, then this feature can come in handy and can smoothen out the process of rejected payments. The next section is not so quick wins because it will require some major configuration and also the enabling on the. So the first one is keyword audit for the expense report. Now, what does this mean? That till now the expense reports can be audited on the basis of percentage, that if I want to audit a specific percentage of the expense report, system will automatically select random reports based upon that. Or if I want to audit the expense report on the basis of my some amount, that any expense report submitted over and above this particular amount that needs to be audited, or on the basis of there is some receipt missing or violation of the policy. But now with this particular feature, Oracle has provided us with an additional flexibility that I can now audit the expense reports just based upon some keywords. For example, if there are some, I want to identify some expenses just based upon the expense type, whether there is a subscription or the purchases from specific merchants that we know that there can be some issues. So if we want to make sure that those expense reports are audited, even if they don't meet the other criteria, then Oracle has now introduced this feature wherein I can specify in my configuration that if the expense report contains these specific keywords, automatically send them to the auditing purpose for the auditing. So unless and until the expense auditors have audited the report, it will not be available for payment. So a good feature for the tighter controls around the expense payments, if we have any such requirement. The next one is for the digital assistant, expense digital assistant, automatic synchronization of expense types and synonyms to the Oracle digital assistant. Now it is a good feature introduced by Oracle on the Oracle digital assistant front, wherein if I just provide them the details of the expenses, that what kind of expense I have incurred, system will automatically identify that to which expense type I need to map this particular expense. For example, I have just mentioned that, okay, I booked an Uber and I have a receipt for $40 for an Uber. System can identify, okay, Uber means taxi fare or the cab fare, system will automatically map it to that particular expense type. The configuration required is that against expense type, we need to specify some synonyms that, okay, on what basis Oracle Digital Assistant can link those expense types to those expense words. And this gets automatically synchronized between the Oracle Digital Assistant and the configuration in the system. So Oracle has introduced the conversational features and the conversational ability of the digital assistant, wherein just providing by the what kind of expense it is, system will automatically map it to the expense type. The next one is prevent prior period amortized adjustments. Now this is, I'll say specific, we have not seen this requirement coming in the UK sector, but with respect to the US and to the Europe sector, we have seen that organizations are required to maintain their tax books separately. So what it does is, now there are some legal requirements for maintaining the tax books, wherein the prior period adjustments are not allowed. Though they are allowed in the corporate books, but they are not allowed in the tax books. So by this feature, Oracle has made sure that whatever the prior period adjustments you are making in the corporate book are not transferred to the tax book. So by just enabling a checkbox in my asset book, system can now system will prevent that any amortized adjustment that you do in the corporate book are not transferred to the tax book. So if you are maintaining the tax book, then you can use this particular feature to ensure legal compliance with the requirements. The next one is again a small feature, but it requires configuration, which is more from the reporting side of view of how we can use the smart view and the financial reporting studio. Now, this feature is useful for those organizations which have multiple currencies, transactions in multiple currencies, and they also need to report in the multiple currencies as part of their reporting requirements. This feature now allows the organization to report the converted currencies and the entered currencies side by side in the Smart View and the FRS, which was earlier not available in both the tools for the financial reporting. With this feature, now the standard fields are available to capture all the reports, and users can create now their own reports using this particular feature. So those were the details of the new features introduced by Oracle. We have also provided a link to the shared to the list to the Oracle, wherein you can find the details. Over to you, Chris.
Suki, thank you very much for that. There was certainly some very interesting features that Oracle are bringing into 21A, and I'm sure that there's quite a few that our attendees today are going to want to benefit from. So let's look at how other technologies can help with not only facilitating the release cycle, but also how it can drive further success from your Oracle applications, and in this instance from an ERP perspective. So looking at leveraging other technology now, we've looked at taking some of the latest technologies and have created a series of 3 packages across 3 distinct areas, namely robotic process automation, or RPA for short, analytics, and chatbots. With RPA, we look at how we can help our customers automate the regression testing that is carried out for each of these quarterly cycles to save time and provide focus on where it's required. And we also look at how we can save time too with automating some business process. From an analytics perspective, our value-based analytics that some of you may already have, they can be overlaid on the existing analytics that you have in place and provides key information around some 4 key areas. So we look at identifying processes that can be optimized or even automated. From a system adoption perspective, we can help identify areas and reasons for low adoption rates, and in turn provide recommendations on changes to improve these. We also look at how data outputs that you and your teams need from the system to provide greater visibility of data. And then finally, looking at covering audit and compliance, that look at regulations and segregation of duties, as well as ensuring compliance with internal SLAs that you may have in. And then finally, we have chatbots. And we earlier spoke about digital assistants in the bit that Sukit covered around some of the expense management. But chatbots can be used to as a method of improving adoption of Oracle Cloud. And we can actually, overlay that or underpin that with the utilization of a knowledge base to answer employee information as well as customer queries, as well as reducing that learning curve of some of those Oracle modules that you've either deployed or you're looking to deploy in your organization. Now, for each of these areas, I am looking to cover those in a bit more detail. And today, I'm going to be looking at the RPA piece. But what I'd be really interested in doing now is just asking you as the attendees to just do a quick vote on what you would like to see out of analytics and chatbot in the up and coming quarterly releases for 21B and C. So if I could just start a poll, you bear with me 1 second, and could I ask you all to just vote for me as to what you'd like to see after today's session appearing in 21B. Would you rather us do a session on the role that analytics can play, or actually looking at how you can leverage digital assistant or chatbot technologies within your organization? Okay, so nearly all of you have voted. I'll just leave the poll open for 10 more seconds just to give those of you who haven't voted yet the opportunity to actually. I've just closed the poll and I can see that the overwhelming winner there is analytics. But for those of you that have selected chatbot, don't worry, we will still cover that. It will just be later on in the year. But I will also add at this stage that anyone who does have a real desire to want to explore analytics and how they can be used in their organization, or even the use of digital assistants in your organization, don't wait until the next advisory sessions. Please do contact us and we'll be more than happy to arrange a session with you to explore those further. So back to my slides. So just looking a bit more at the RPA piece. RPA can be broken down into two main areas that could benefit you. So you can look at regression testing as well as automating business or transactional processes. Okay, so firstly, from a regression testing perspective, many of you on this webinar will be focused on finance. So I've included a table of the number of standard processes that we have automated scripts for, broken down by the modules across finance. It is important to note that clearly, if you have non-standard processes here, we need to adapt or develop specific automated testing scripts for your specific environment. By running these processes alone, the Centre of Excellence team reported back a 20% saving on testing time as a result of using RPA between 20C and 20D. Now, this is an extremely conservative figure from my colleagues in the Centre of Excellence, and it does form a base minimum that you can achieve. We do have customers that have saved nearer 70% on testing time, for example, but it is important for us to be realistic with you on the time that you could potentially save early on and then throughout the actual the journey. Time saving will be exponential as you invest more time and energy into working with us to tailor the testing process up front. But nonetheless, where we did the work, this 20% was passed back to customers, and we were able to focus on the failed processes by reviewing and resolving any config issues, or, if necessary, going back and alerting Oracle to software-related issues that needed to be fixed. And the great thing about this is it's not just about the time it saves, or the time it saves us and our customers. It's about the speed or the elapsed time which the tests are done in. And it ultimately gives us more time in that testing phase to make sure that we're ready for a new release. Just before I move on to business, the business process automation side, just a slight reminder to all of our attendees, if you are just absorbing a lot of what Sukita and myself are saying, please do ask any questions as we go, and then we'll look to actually answer them either immediately or towards the end of the webinar. Thank you. So from a business process automation perspective, this is likely to be where larger savings can be realized. So we spoke earlier about how our VBA solution, or the analytics solution that we have, can be used to help identify business processes that are ideal candidates for automation, for example. One of those processes, once those processes have been identified, we can recommend investing time up front to standardize or even redesign the processes before you automate them. And that's actually quite important. And what was interesting is that back in May 2020, Forrester wrote an interesting paper talking about the importance of RPA in this modern world. And what was actually quite interesting was how much of a role they believe it will play in the post-pandemic world. They included some golden rules for robotic process automation, and they said that it's vitally important to carry out the standardization process rewrite step, even if it increases the initial costs of actually carrying out robotic process automation. And this is because ultimately it will lead to a more sustainable automation with improved returns. And they also went on to say how important it was to have a well-documented process map on any of the processes that you're looking to automate. And that's because automation is normally a fragment of a wider process. So you need to ensure that automation factors in the dependencies of the wider process, if there are any. And the other point that the report made was that humans still find more improved ways of getting jobs done by using different tools, for example, or even identifying shortcuts. And that's why it's better to look at simplifying and standardizing the processes first as humans before we then actually put them into the robotic process automation engine. So once we've done that, some of the benefits to actually automating those business processes is that, so for the first one around availability, once you've automated a process, it's available 24/7. So if you have an Excel file with 2,000 journals, for example, that you need to enter, that can be run overnight. And because of it, it makes RPA an efficient tool to get work done. Linked to efficiency and availability is speed. So not only can processes run 4 to 5 times faster as robots than humans can process automation doesn't have the distractions that we all experience from, for example, being interrupted by a phone call or someone popping over to your desk to ask a question. Although, given the current restrictions most of us are under, I think I personally would welcome being in an office with colleagues interrupting me. So the fourth point is assurances over the level of accuracy. So give a robot a task and it will deliver consistently. Obviously, the note to that is that it's important to get it right up front and to give the information correctly to the robot so that it actually follows through and delivers an accurate outcome. And then the final point is an interesting one, it's focus. So many processes that we look to automate revolve around data entry. And if we take these processes away from employees, it allows them to then focus on the value add activities. And that actually increases employee engagement as a result. So just 10 minutes on how RPA can be used in 2 different areas. So from a regression testing perspective, and then looking at the wider business process automation. I hope that you found that useful. If you do want to have a follow-up discussion around how you could potentially leverage some of this technology, a lot of this technology is written in a solution called UiPath, and we have lots of examples and case studies of where we've actually achieved better outcomes with process automation. But please either contact us via your project manager or using the details that we actually provide you towards the end of the web. Okay, so the next stage of this webinar is the Q&A session. So I'd like to invite Ankit now to bring any unanswered questions to the forefront so that we can discuss with Sukit if possible.
Yeah, so I think, thank you, Chris. There have been one question which has been raised from the functionality point of view. So one was associated to the remit to bank override functionality which was introduced. So it was raised by a colleague from Arcadis, wherein they wanted to know what would happen in case the data entered is not a valid data or a wrong account number has been entered over there. So just for the information for everyone, in case the supplier account number that you are trying to upload using the FBDI or the REST API which has been introduced now, and if the account number is not valid or is not associated to the supplier for which you are uploading the installment invoice installment, the same would get rejected or will be stopped into the interface itself. So it will not get imported with the wrong bank account number. So we don't need to be worried from that point of view. So that was the question from the feature point of view. Another question was from one of our colleagues from Croydon, wherein they wanted to understand which all modules we have been covering. So during this release, we have covered the areas which were introduced, that is for payables, for AR, for fixed assets, GL, and expenses, and the cash management. So these are all the modules for which the session has been conducted. For the AR specifically, we have covered the cash pooling functionality, which has been introduced as for the multifund, which we saw and explained by Sugit. Another area or another feature which was highlighted by Oracle in this release was around the enhancement with regard to the receipt application, the search feature. So these were the two key areas which have been addressed. And what we do as a part of the webinar or the broadcast is we pick up the topics or the features which are most used amongst the functionality as per our experience or as per the clients which we have introduced for. So this is how we have been picking up the features and the quick wins. And also the other query was around how we can see the other topics or the other features which are not part of the presentation. So as explained, the topics that we are covering are the key features. So the rest of them you can pick up from the presentation which will be there. And in case you have any additional queries, please don't hesitate to connect with us. We'll be happy to assist you even outside the broadcast. I think over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So just putting it out to our attendees, are there any other questions now that you've had a chance to digest what Sugit and myself have covered in today's session? Are there any further questions that you'd like us to discuss and answer for you? So we just had a question come in around when will 21A be deployed? Sugit, can I ask you to take that one?
Sure, Chris. So 21A, every organization gets a detail their own dates from the Oracle. So if you haven't got any update from the Oracle, you could just raise an ESA or check the My Services that when the 21A is planned for your test environments and the production environments. It will be in the month of February, starting from the month of February. And in the first weekend, it's normally the test environments, and the third weekend is for the production. But the details would still be available on your My Services account.
Excellent. Thank you, Sugit. There's another question that's been raised. So from an expense audit, is the keyword search global or is it by BU?
Okay. Keyword, give me a moment. Let me just confirm that back to you. I need to check that out. And I'll just check that out and come back to you after the broadcast, because we need to go into some more detail into that one to check whether Oracle has provided that in the release notes or not. If provided, I'll respond back to you outside the broadcast.
Are there any other questions from our attendees today? Looks like all of the questions, just going through the questions now, have been answered, Sugit. So let's just give our attendees a few more minutes. And if there are no more questions, we can draw the webinar to a close. As we what I'll do actually, whilst we wait for a few more questions, is I will just put a closing note up just so that you all understand what happens next. So the presentation and the screen recordings or the session recordings will be made available, and a feedback form will be provided with those. So what we would really ask you is to fill that in as much as possible. We value your feedback. These sessions are for your benefit, so we want to make sure that they are of relevance to you and that you get the most out of them. So any feedback that you can give us, good or bad, would be greatly received. For any of the things that we've covered today, either myself or Sugit, if you've got any questions or you want to engage with us further to understand more, please either speak with your project manager, or if you could email us at business@evosysglobal.com. Again, that information will be provided to you as part of the pack. But please do reach out to us if you've got any questions, queries, or discussion points. On the right of the screen there, you'll see that there are some follow-up sessions. So this is the first of a number of sessions that we're running. Today's focus was on finance. Tomorrow we'll have a global HR update or quarterly updates. Followed then by a talent management one on the 21st. On the 22nd, we will have one on workforce management. and then followed next week by supply chain management on the 25th, as well as HR help desk and Oracle recruiting, with the global payroll quarterly update on the 27th of January. So some of them may not be relevant to you, but please do let your colleagues in each of those departments know to visit our website and register for those sessions to get access to a similar session for their specific area. So just coming back to the questions now, Suki, we do have another. One of the question is how can I get access to the recording? So hopefully I've answered that question for you. So our marketing team will be sending out the recording to all of the attendees that joined us today. So we'll endeavour to get that over to you as soon as possible. Okay, so if there are no other questions, thank you all ever so much for joining today. We do hope you found it useful. Hopefully you've made lots of notes, or you're going to refer back to the recordings. And I'll reiterate again, if there's anything that Evosys can do to help you on your Oracle journey, please do get in touch with us with the contact information that you can see on your screen now. But if there's no other questions, I wish you a good day, a good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and we look forward to seeing you soon.